Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fluff the Nut. I'm your host, the Nut, because the title doesn't make any sense then. Let's get on to the fluff, shall we? This episode will cover the Necrons and the Necrontyr. In the last episode I talked about the Necrontyr, but this episode will focus more on them, so I may repeat some things. The Necrontyr orbited a highly radioactive sun, and because of this, their lives were very short and very painful. In fact, they didn't build cities so much as they built large tomb complexes in order to accommodate the vast amount of dead they would have because of this radioactive sun. Their culture was a morbid and sad one. The Necrontyr divided themselves into several dynasties. These dynasties were constantly at war with each other and battled each other for power. The Necrontyr tried to extend their life through scientific means, but after thousands of years of research, they knew that they couldn't. Instead, they developed spacefaring technology much slower than the kind of the old ones, which allowed instantaneous teleportation across the galaxy. Theirs used slow-moving spacecraft that had to be equipped with stasis crypts in order to reach other stars. The Necrontyr would eventually be a species known as the Old Ones. They were nigh immortal, easily colonized other worlds, traveled across the galaxy in a blink of the eye. The Necrontyr became extremely jealous of this new species. They absolutely despised them, and the Necrontyr used this hatred to rally and start a war with them that became known as the War in Heaven. Although this war was long and bloody, the Necrontyr could not defeat the Old Ones. The Old Ones outmaneuvered them with the webway at every turn. Although the Necrontyr had superior technology, it didn't change the outcome of the war. The Necrontyr were reduced to nothing more than an annoyance. The Necrontyr were forced to stay in the Halo stars, which was their original birthplace. Looking at their sun, there they discovered the ancient beings, which they referred to as the Catan, or star gods. The Catan were gaseous beings made of energy that fed off of stars. They were massive in size and easily covered entire stars. This was the answer the Necrontyr needed to defeat the Old Ones. Realizing the Catan had no understanding of the material universe around them, the Necrontyr proceeded to construct metal bodies for them. Eventually, one of the Catan came across the Starlight Bridge. Its name, Azagorod, and it would later be called the Nightbringer. The Catan soon realized that they enjoyed the souls of living beings far more than the sun they were used to. The Silent King, the leader of the Necrontyr people, made a deal with a Catan known as the Messenger. He would later be known as the Deceiver. The deal was, the Catan would help with the war against the Old Ones, and the Necrontyr would convert their bodies into living metal, which later became known as the Necrons. They did not foresee the side effects of this. They became soulless killing machines, easily manipulated by the Catan. On a quick side note, I'm going to go over what Necrons basically are. The Necrons are skeletal machines that have glowing, swirling energies emanating from mechanical limbs and their eyes. Necrons are able to repair themselves on the battlefield fairly easily. They can even repair some of the most devastating damages. But this is not always the case. So when a Necron doesn't have the option of rebuilding itself, it's too far damaged, it will phase out and teleport to the nearest tomb, where it will be reconstructed, or its mind will be transferred to a new body. Although, if this happens several times, mind will fragment, and it will become nothing more than an autonomous killing machine. There's a very large hierarchy to Necron society. Pharaohs rule entire dynasties. Sometimes that includes several planets. Beneath them are overlords, who rule a cluster of tomb worlds. And then pharaohs and overlords also have royal courts, which have Necron lords and cryptechs. The size of the court means how prestigious they are, and it's a sign of military power and nobility. Necrons use Gauss weaponry, which strip the opponent's molecules one layer at a time. Or Gauss weaponry also does significant damage to vehicles. Alright, now back to the main story. The Necrontyr now in their immortal bodies, and the Catan pledging their service to fight. The second part of the War in Heaven began. The Catan and the Necrons unleashed a genocidal campaign unlike the galaxy has ever seen. Millions of races were extinguished. The Nightbringer himself wiped out entire areas of space, down to the bacterial level. legions of Necron warriors pushed the Old Ones back to the corners of the galaxy. But the Old Ones were not down for the count. They had several races that they created just to fight the Necrons and release them. The Catan were weak against the powers of the warp that these new races possessed. The psychic powers of the new races were ultimately pushing the Necrons back. Unfortunately, the Enslaver Plague was released from the warp and drove the Old Ones to extinction. With the Old Ones extinct and the Enslavers killing many other races, the Catan didn't have the vast harvests they were used to, and due to their hunger, began devouring each other. So the Catan were in a weakened state. The Silent King saw his chance. Having a deep-seated hatred for the Catan, he rallied his people in order to fight them. And so, with extremely powerful weapons, they obliterated the Catan, although not completely. The Catan were merely broken into shards. The Necrons took heavy losses from rebelling against the Catan, and even then, they didn't destroy all of them. The Silent King then realized that there was no way they could win the war. With the Eldar far too numerous and the Enslaver Plague still rampant, the war would only end in a loss. So he told his subjects to take the Great Sleep. On their worlds, they constructed large tomb complexes, which they would later sleep for millions of years and reawaken. And so, the Necrons slept. For 40 million years they waited. The Silent King himself did not partake in the Great Sleep. Instead, he explored the outer reaches of space. Until a couple of thousand years ago, he discovered a new threat, the Tyranids. They were out on the eastern fringe of the galaxy. He soon realized the Tyranids posed a threat to all life, not just the Necrons, and returned in hopes of reawakening his people, in order to fight the coming onslaught. But over the 40 million years that the Silent King had been gone, many Necron worlds had fell into disarray. Some were destroyed by the Eldar, some lost their power source and were deactivated, some Necron worlds saw the Horus Heresy and Great Crusade, others saw the fall of the Eldar. The Necrons are confused by the world they've woken to. It's ruled by the children of their enemies, and so they will often go to war with them because of this. Well, this is the end of the episode. I think the next one will be about the Catan, and then after that, the Warp, and then after that, the Eldar. That's the lineup. Sorry it took so long to make this episode. My New Year's resolution was to try and get one out a week, and that has failed, obviously. But I'll try and be better about this. Once again, if I messed anything up, correct me on it. If you want to see changes to this, also that, or if you want me to cover a topic, I'm all ears. Thank you for all the people that have subscribed and liked. It means a lot to me, because I never thought I would get any views on this video, so on that note, good night and good luck.